So there are four things you need to understand about business value if you're going to communicate and effectively win in the workplace, or at least get ahead on the subjects that you want to get ahead on. I'm John, glad you're back. So let's jump into the one through four here. So number one in a business, obviously, if you bring in sales, that's valuable to a company. So that's like the baseline, right? The second aspect that makes value for a company is if you are cutting costs. Now, cutting costs comes in a few different forms, and there's kind of a derivation of that going into the next two. But typically, at the high level, cutting costs would be things like you brought in this material you use for cheaper than you did last time, or you cut the number of hours it took you to achieve something, whatever it might have been, right? So that's the second aspect. The third aspect is if you are mitigating risk. So the logic here is that there are certain things you need to operate a lot of businesses. You need a licensure, you need an FDA audit if you're going to be in food, probably. You need a variety of things. So risk mitigation is like a quality department or legal department sets a structure up and framework that stops you from getting sued and losing money unexpectedly and allows you to operate. And if you were to fall off the boat on some of those things, you might lose your authority to operate. And the fourth thing that you run into is business enablement. So business enablement brings value in the manner that when you do something, other people are way more effective in their jobs. So very common examples for this might be like an IT team setting up systems so everyone else can transact faster, or an executive assistant taking a bunch of clutter tasks off of people who are paid a lot of money and making them faster achieving their jobs. Or if you have a sales support person within a sales department that does all of the customer support and account management stuff while the sales team are out on the road, traveling around meeting people, whatever it might be. So that's kind of the enablement function. Your value comes from how much more effective you make other people at achieving bringing in value. Okay. So from there, understanding this is key. Why? Because if you go to somebody, you try to talk to them in a terms of value that they don't understand, they're just going to go, get out of my face. Easy example is I watched a quality manager from our corporate team talking to somebody from an operating location the other day. It was like the corporate quality manager, the on-site quality manager who, understands his lingo, and the warehousing and kind of distribution supervisor. Now, the corporate quality manager is telling this warehousing supervisor, you need this paperwork to be right every time. And the warehousing supervisor is like, congratulations, paperwork. I know it's needed, but what's more important is that the production line runs, so materials are moving through our facility, and we're receiving this stuff in a timely manner, so we're not getting charged by the trucking companies what they call a detention charge for their trucks sitting too long on our docks, because that ends up as a bill in front of somebody who has to approve it, and then it's on his head for the fact that this truck didn't get unloaded fast enough. And I kind of watched this interaction. I mediated because I was there for technical, understanding of the subject matter that was going on. But I had to jump in like two, three times and say to the warehousing supervisor, okay, man, think about it this way. If you brought in a material that was bad in some manner and we opened it up and figured out that it was bad a week later, and you didn't have this paperwork just right to say, hey, this was suspect and you brought this material in, we wouldn't be able to go back to the supplier and say, see, we documented it, blah, 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 and get a claim back, have them repay us for that bad product. And I explained that to him, and he kind of understood. Oh, okay, cool. So this is a legal concern, and a truckload of product might be $400,000. It might be $50,000, whatever. But that's a lot of money. So the point was, if you do your paperwork right every time, quality can go back and get that money back if something goes wrong. If you don't do it right, they're going to look at us and say, show me the proof that it was our fault, this was the thing. And then we're not going to have it, and then that might be an issue. And that's the whole risk mitigation aspect. And our quality managers couldn't understand the priority and the value that our warehousing and distribution supervisor was trained to watch and manage day to day. So if you can look at a situation, understand where somebody else is, and say, this person understands and values this thing in this manner at this level. So if I go to them, I either need to frame what I'm doing in reduction of whatever value cost they're trying to pursue, or I need to explain to them, I understand that this is this valuable to you, but if we don't get my thing right, it's going to be this much more valuable, and you're part of that chain of events, so I need your help. And if you can convince someone of that value and explain why this is important outside of their role, which they might not understand, they're going to be, one, more willing to help you. Two, They might even just look at the situation and say, okay, cool, I'm just going to reprioritize. I will shift off of doing this. I'll take the detention charge in the case of my warehousing distribution supervisor so that I can get these paperworks done so we don't lose $40,000, 5 months down the road. If you think about it this way, let's say you get charged $100 every time you get a detention charge on your company. Okay. I think it's actually $75 an hour, but let's say it was 100 and you get charged twice a week. Okay. $200, 50 weeks in a year. Okay. That's like $1,000, right? So what? If you have one slip up and it's the wrong shipment paperwork, and you can't go and claim money back from a supplier that gives you bad product worth $40,000, that's a ton of money that you're losing versus the little bit that you would have been charged. So that's kind of the trade off there. And that's how you got to understand and communicate value across teams and across types of value that people understand. So we'll wrap it right there. Thanks for coming in and have a great day.